If you've been feeling tired for no reason, your mind is trying to tell you something, especially about the people you keep letting into your life. It usually begins quietly. Maybe you're sitting on your bed late at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying the same pattern again. Someone new has entered your life. They said all the right things. They made you feel seen until they didn't. One moment they were warm, present, attentive. And the next, cold, distant, and impossible to reach. You told yourself to be patient. You tried to be understanding. You tried not to look too needy. But beneath all your calmness, something was unraveling. Familiar ache, a familiar confusion, a familiar fear. Why does this keep happening to me? You didn't want to believe it, but part of you felt it from the beginning. The silence, the emotional inconsistency, the way their affection always seemed to hover just out of reach. But instead of walking away, you leaned in, hoping, trying, giving, until you started to feel like you were the only one holding the relationship together. And tonight, sitting in that quiet room, you finally ask yourself the question you've been avoiding. Why do I keep attracting emotionally unavailable people? Here's the part most people never hear: emotionally unavailable people don't just randomly appear in your life. Your brain is wired to notice certain people, to feel pulled toward certain dynamics, and to confuse familiarity with safety. Psychologists call this attachment-driven attraction. Your early experiences teach your nervous system what love feels like, not necessarily what healthy love feels like. If love once meant working hard for someone's attention, feeling unsure, or holding your breath emotionally, your brain may unconsciously seek out relationships that recreate that emotional climate. Not because it's good for you, because it's familiar. You may be giving off subtle cues without even realizing it. Empaths, caregivers, and emotionally attuned people often attract partners who crave comfort but fear intimacy. These partners feel drawn to your warmth but overwhelmed by the responsibility of emotional connection. And here's the twist. Your brain is wired to interpret inconsistency as rewarding. When someone gives affection unpredictably, your dopamine system stays on alert, waiting, craving, hoping. That intermittent reward cycle makes emotionally unavailable people feel more addictive than emotionally secure ones. You're not broken. You're not cursed. Your emotional patterns are simply running on autopilot. Patterns you can learn to rewrite. Here's the deeper truth. Emotionally unavailable people often step into your life when you're disconnected from parts of yourself. When you're tired, when you're depleted, when you've been functioning on survival mode self-esteem, believing you have to earn love rather than simply receive it. And so, you overextend. You read between the lines. You justify their distance. You try to be understanding. Not because you're naive, but because somewhere inside, you've learned to settle for emotional breadcrumbs. Maybe you grew up in a home where feelings were inconvenient. Maybe you learned early that being quiet, helpful, or undemanding made things smoother. Maybe you learned that you were safest when you weren't too much. So now, when someone keeps you at arm's length, you don't immediately walk away. You work harder. You explain their behavior. You convince yourself they're just going through something. You hope that if you love them patiently enough, gently enough, fully enough, they'll finally open up. But here's the moment most people miss. Emotionally unavailable people don't open up because you give more. They open up when they are emotionally ready. Something completely outside your control. And your healing begins when you stop taking their unavailability personally. It's not about you being unworthy. It's about them being unprepared. Your heart keeps choosing the familiar pattern because it hasn't yet learned what safety feels like. You're drawn to the emotional puzzle, not because you want pain, but because you want resolution. You want the closeness you never got. You want to prove to yourself that you can finally be chosen. But the breakthrough happens the moment you ask yourself, what would it feel like to choose someone who doesn't make me guess? What would it feel like to be loved without effort? What would it feel like if I stopped trying to earn what should be freely given? This is your turning point. Healing doesn't begin when someone finally chooses you. Healing begins the moment you choose yourself enough to stop chasing people who can't show up. When you set boundaries. When you slow down before getting attached. When you stop ignoring the early signs. When you recognize that love without emotional safety is not love. It is longing. And longing is not your destiny. You deserve stable love. Reciprocal love. Consistent love. A love that doesn't make you shrink yourself just to keep someone close. The moment you believe that your patterns change. Your standards strengthen. Your attraction shifts. Your nervous system recalibrates. Suddenly, emotionally unavailable people stop feeling magnetic. And emotionally healthy people start feeling peaceful. Maybe even unfamiliar at first, but in a way that lets your shoulders drop and your breath soften. Because your heart finally remembers what it was supposed to feel like all along. If this spoke to you, if you felt yourself somewhere inside these words, know this. Your patterns don't define you. Your story is still unfolding, and you have the power to change the ending. And if you want more calm, late-night psychology stories that help you understand your mind and break the cycles that keep hurting you, subscribe for more.